Alright, girls, gather around because I have a story that completely changed my life in the most unexpected way imaginable. One ordinary day, everything I thought I knew about myself was turned upside down, and from that moment forward, nothing was ever the same again. Back then, everyone knew me as Ted. That was the name I answered to, the person the world believed I was. But hidden behind that ordinary image was a part of me that no one had ever seen. It was a secret I guarded carefully, making sure it stayed locked away from curious eyes. Whenever I had the house to myself, I would open the closet that held my favorite collection of clothes. The moment I slipped into a beautiful dress, everything around me seemed to fade away. It wasn't about pretending to be someone else. It was about feeling free in a way I couldn't explain. Every outfit made me feel more confident, more graceful, and somehow more like the version of myself that only existed in private. I had developed quite an eye for fashion over the years. I adored playful dresses that flared perfectly when I spun around. Delicate patterned tights were always my weakness because they added just the right amount of elegance without trying too hard. And don't even get me started on high heels. A gorgeous pair of glossy pumps could instantly transform my entire mood. The moment they clicked against the floor, I felt taller, bolder, and surprisingly fearless. Of course, this wasn't something I shared with anyone. To my family, my friends, and everyone who knew me, I was simply Ted. They had absolutely no idea about the hidden wardrobe or the confidence I found whenever I dressed up. I believed I had covered my tracks perfectly. Every dress went back on its hanger. Every pair of heels returned neatly to the shelf. Every trace disappeared before anyone could suspect a thing. Or at least that's what I convinced myself. One afternoon, with the house completely quiet and not a soul expected to stop by, I decided it was the perfect opportunity to enjoy my little ritual. I carefully picked out one of my favorite outfits, a sleek black skater dress that hugged just right before flowing into a playful skirt. To complete the look, I chose a pair of sheer tights decorated with tiny polka dots. There was something irresistibly charming about them, adding just enough personality without being over the top. Finally, I reached for my favorite shoes. They were glossy patent pumps that reflected the light every time I moved. Sliding my feet into them always felt like the finishing touch that brought the entire outfit together. As soon as I stood up, I couldn't help smiling. The heels lengthened my posture, the dress twirled effortlessly with every step, and for the first time that day I felt absolutely amazing. I admired my reflection from every angle, smoothing the skirt and adjusting a loose strand of hair. The outfit felt perfect. I even practiced walking across the room, enjoying the sharp rhythmic click of my heels against the hardwood floor. It was impossible not to grin. At that moment I felt unstoppable. Completely convinced that my secret was still safe, I decided to make the most of the afternoon. I had no idea that before the day was over, everything I had worked so hard to hide was about to come crashing into the open, setting off a chain of events that would change my life forever. I decided to pause halfway down the staircase for one last dramatic moment. The afternoon sunlight spilled through the windows, catching the shine of my heels and making the tiny dots on my sheer tights sparkle. I placed one hand on the railing, shifted my weight onto one hip, and admired the reflection in the hallway mirror. It wasn't for anyone else's benefit. There was no audience. It was simply one of those little moments where I could enjoy feeling completely myself. At least I believed I was alone. Then a familiar voice floated through the house. "Hey, are you home?" The sound froze me instantly. My wife. Every confident thought disappeared in the blink of an eye. My stomach dropped, my heartbeat pounded in my ears, and I was convinced every ounce of color had rushed straight into my face. It felt as though I'd been caught standing under the brightest spotlight imaginable. I slowly turned my head, expecting confusion, disappointment, maybe even anger. Instead, Amanda stood near the front door with the biggest smile I had ever seen. She wasn't staring in disbelief. She wasn't upset. If anything, she looked delighted. Her eyes traveled over my outfit, the flared black dress, the patterned tights, the polished heels, and her expression lit up even more. "Well," she said with a playful grin, "this certainly isn't what I expected to find when I came home." I opened my mouth to explain, but absolutely nothing came out. Every excuse I had rehearsed over the years suddenly vanished. Amanda crossed her arms, pretending to study me like an art critic admiring a masterpiece. "You know," she continued, "Ted doesn't seem quite like the right name for this version of you." I blinked. "What?" She tilted her head thoughtfully. Maybe something softer." She smiled. Tessa. The name seemed to hang in the air between us. Tessa, she repeated with complete confidence. Yes, that fits perfectly. I stood there speechless. Of all the reactions I had imagined over the years, this wasn't even remotely close to any of them. I had prepared myself for questions. For awkward conversations. Maybe even rejection. Instead, my wife was giving me a new name with the enthusiasm of someone introducing a lifelong best friend. I don't know what to say, I admitted quietly. Amanda climbed the stairs until she was standing right beside me. She gently reached out and adjusted a loose strand of my hair before smoothing the shoulder of my dress. You look wonderful, she said sincerely. Really? Really? There wasn't even a trace of hesitation in her voice. I can't believe you've been keeping this hidden all this time. I nervously laughed. I didn't know how you'd react. She looked genuinely surprised. You thought I'd be upset? I shrugged. I was terrified. Amanda wrapped her arms around me in a warm hug. Oh, sweetheart. She pulled back just enough to look me in the eyes. I wish you had trusted me sooner. The tension I'd been carrying for years began melting away. For the first time, I wasn't trying to hide. I wasn't worried about someone discovering my secret. Because the one person whose opinion mattered most had just accepted me exactly as I was. Amanda stepped back and gave me a playful twirl. The skirt of my dress spun beautifully around my legs. There, she laughed. See? You're absolutely adorable. I couldn't stop smiling anymore. So, I asked carefully, you're really okay with this? She laughed. Okay with it? I'm thrilled. Then she pointed toward my shoes. First of all, those heels are gorgeous. I looked down at them. They're my favorite pair. I can see why. She circled me once, nodding approvingly. The dress fits perfectly. The tights are incredibly cute. And honestly, she paused dramatically. You've got better taste than a lot of people I know. I burst into laughter. He laughed too. The nervousness that had filled the room only minutes earlier had completely disappeared. Amanda took my hands and squeezed them gently. Listen, she said, from today forward, I think it's time you stopped hiding this part of yourself. I looked at her uncertainly. You really mean that? I absolutely do. She smiled warmly. If being Tessa makes you this happy, then I want to know Tessa too. Hearing those words nearly brought tears to my eyes. Years of secrecy. Years of worrying. Years of convincing myself no one could ever understand. And all along, the person standing beside me wasn't rejecting me. She was inviting me to be myself. So, I said with a nervous grin. Tessa. Amanda nodded immediately. Tessa. She extended her hand with exaggerated elegance. It's lovely to finally meet you. Laughing, I shook her hand. It's nice to meet you too. She leaned closer and whispered dramatically. Although I have one tiny complaint. Oh. She pointed toward my lips. Your lipstick could use a quick touch-up. I instinctively covered my mouth. Oh no. She giggled. Don't worry. She grabbed my wrist. Come upstairs. Within minutes, she had me sitting in front of the bedroom mirror while she carefully fixed my makeup, brushed my hair into place, and offered little fashion tips as though we'd been doing this together for years. There, she announced proudly after stepping back. Now that's a look. I stared at my reflection. For once, I didn't feel like I was pretending. I simply looked happy. Amanda smiled through the mirror. You know what? What? We're not spending the rest of the afternoon hiding inside. My eyes widened. What do you mean? She reached for her purse. I mean we're going out. In public. Of course. I stared at her in complete disbelief. I've never. She interrupted with a reassuring smile. You won't be alone. She slipped on her own heels. I'm right beside you. My nerves returned for a brief moment, but this time they were mixed with excitement instead of fear. Amanda linked her arm through mine. Ready? I took a deep breath. I think so. She opened the front door with a dramatic flourish. Then let's introduce the world to my beautiful wife. The words caught me completely off guard. Wife, what? She laughed. My wife. She winked mischievously. I've always wanted to be part of the most fabulous couple in town. I couldn't stop laughing. Whether she was teasing me or simply enjoying the moment didn't matter. What mattered was how effortlessly she made me feel accepted. Together we stepped outside. Our heels clicked against the sidewalk in perfect rhythm as we walked side by side. For the first time in my life, I wasn't hiding behind closed doors. I wasn't constantly looking over my shoulder. I wasn't afraid of being seen. I was simply walking beside the person who loved me enough to embrace every side of who I was. The afternoon felt brighter. The breeze felt lighter. Even the simplest things seemed magical. Every step forward felt like leaving behind years of fear and stepping into an entirely new chapter. If someone had told me that morning that my carefully guarded secret would become the beginning of the happiest day of my life, I would have laughed. Yet here I was, no longer carrying the weight of pretending. Ted had spent years hiding. Tessa was finally ready to live. As soon as we stepped onto the sidewalk together, Amanda slipped her arm through mine as if this had always been our normal routine. The afternoon air felt fresh, and every click of our heels echoed confidently along the pavement. I was still adjusting to everything that had happened, but Amanda looked completely at ease, wearing the kind of smile that made everyone around her feel welcome. After a few steps, she glanced at me from the corner of her eye and let out a quiet laugh. "You know something, Tessa?" I looked over at her. "What?" She gave my legs another playful look before shaking her head dramatically. "I honestly cannot believe you've been keeping those legs hidden all these years." I immediately covered my face with one hand, laughing from embarrassment. "Amanda." "No, I'm serious." He pointed toward my tights. "You've been secretly walking around with model-worthy legs, and I never had the slightest clue." I couldn't help laughing even harder. "It's the tights," I insisted. "They work miracles." "Oh really?" "Absolutely." I stretched one foot forward dramatically. "A good pair of patterned tights can make anyone feel elegant." Amanda smiled. "And the little dots? They're essential." She raised an eyebrow. "Essential." "Completely. They make every outfit more fun." Amanda laughed so loudly that a couple walking past smiled in our direction. "I think I'm going to learn more about fashion today than I have in my entire life." "You've barely scratched the surface." She bumped my shoulder playfully. "Well then, Mrs. Fashion Expert, I suppose you'll have to teach me." I grinned. "I'd be honored." Amanda squeezed my hand. "I have a feeling we're going to have so much fun together." "Really?" "Oh, absolutely." She started counting on her fingers. "We're going shopping." I smiled. "We're finding you even more gorgeous dresses." My smile grew wider. "We're experimenting with makeup." I nodded enthusiastically. "We're planning girls' nights." I laughed. "And we're definitely organizing a proper closet for all those shoes you've apparently been hiding from me." I couldn't stop smiling. Every single thing she mentioned sounded like something I had secretly imagined but never believed would actually happen. Instead of asking me to stop, she wanted to join me. It felt surreal. For years I had convinced myself that this side of me belonged behind closed doors. Now the person I loved most was making plans to celebrate it. I glanced over at Amanda. "Are you sure you're not dreaming?" She laughed. "If this is a dream, I'm not waking up." Neither was I. "So," I asked after we'd walked another block, "where exactly are we going?" Amanda smiled mysteriously. "It's a surprise. You know I hate surprises." "You love good surprises." "That's true." She leaned closer. "I thought today deserved a proper celebration." "A celebration?" She nodded. "Of course." She looked at me with complete sincerity. "Today isn't about losing Ted. It's about finally meeting Tessa." Those words stayed with me as we continued walking through town. People passed us without giving us a second glance. The fear I'd expected to feel simply wasn't there anymore. Instead, I found myself enjoying the simple rhythm of walking beside Amanda. Eventually we stopped outside one of our favorite cafes. The place had always been one of our little traditions whenever we wanted to relax together. Amanda held the door open with a theatrical flourish. "After you." I laughed and curtsied dramatically before stepping inside. The cafe buzzed with quiet conversations, the aroma of fresh coffee, warm pastries, and sweet desserts filling the room. Soft music played through hidden speakers while sunlight streamed through the large front windows. Everything felt warm and inviting. Amanda found us a cozy table near the window. As soon as we sat down, she looked at the menu for approximately 3 seconds before smiling. "I already know what we're ordering." "You do?" "Absolutely." "What?" Something festive. When the server arrived, Amanda ordered 2 bright pink fruit cocktails without hesitation. I smiled. You picked those because they're pink, didn't you? She looked completely unapologetic. Obviously. They match the occasion. And what's the occasion exactly? She lifted her glass once the drinks arrived. The official debut of my beautiful wife. My cheeks instantly turned warm again. Amanda. What? You keep saying that. Because I like saying it. She smiled so gently that all my embarrassment melted away. She lifted her glass a little higher. To courage. I raised mine. To honesty. She nodded. To new beginnings. And to never hiding again. The glasses touched with a cheerful little clink. I took a sip while trying to process everything that had happened over the course of a single day. Only hours earlier, I had been terrified of anyone discovering my secret. Now I was sitting in a cafe with my wife, openly dressed as myself, celebrating a future I had never dared imagine. Conversation came easily after that. We laughed about my surprisingly impressive knowledge of shoe sizes. Amanda confessed she'd always wondered why I knew so much about women's fashion. I admitted that I had spent years secretly watching makeup tutorials online. She nearly laughed herself into tears. I knew you were suspiciously good at matching colors. I had practice. So much practice apparently. As the evening continued, little moments kept filling me with quiet confidence. The server politely referred to me as, ma'am. A woman passing our table complimented my dress. Another guest smiled and told me my shoes were gorgeous. Each small interaction felt like another layer of fear falling away. Amanda noticed every single one. Whenever I became shy, she'd lean over and whisper softly, "See, you belong." Or she'd smile proudly and say, "I told you." With every encouraging word, I stood a little taller. By the time we left the cafe, the sun had begun disappearing beyond the rooftops. The streets glowed beneath rows of warm lights. The evening air had cooled just enough to make our walk home comfortable. Amanda reached for my hand again. Without thinking, I intertwined my fingers with hers. We wandered through quiet streets, talking about everything from future shopping trips to hairstyles, vacations, and ridiculous outfit ideas we wanted to try together. At one point, Amanda spun me beneath a glowing street lamp. The skirt of my dress flared beautifully around me. I laughed so hard that I nearly lost my balance. He caught me effortlessly. There she is. Who? The happiest woman I've ever seen. I realized she was right. For years I had believed happiness meant hiding, keeping secrets, pretending, trying not to be discovered. Instead, genuine happiness felt astonishingly simple. It was walking hand in hand with someone who accepted every part of me. It was laughing without worrying who might hear. It was hearing the name Tessa, spoken with kindness instead of judgment. By the time we reached home, I no longer felt like someone pretending to wear beautiful clothes. The dresses, the tights, the heels, they were no longer costumes hidden inside a closet. They had become expressions of confidence rather than fear. Amanda wrapped an arm around my shoulders before we walked inside. You know something? What? I don't think today was the end of anything. I smiled. No. She shook her head. I think today was the beginning. I looked down at our hands still linked together. For the first time in my life, I truly believed she was right. The story that had begun with fear on a quiet staircase had transformed into something I never expected. A future built on honesty, laughter, acceptance, and love. And as I followed Amanda through the front door, I couldn't help smiling to myself. Ted had spent years hiding behind locked doors. Tessa had finally stepped into the light, surrounded by love, filled with confidence, and ready to embrace every beautiful chapter that still lay ahead.